Andy Kaufman came into my life because Carl Reiner had seen him at Catch a Rising Star. And Carl, this was like the next day he had flew back to Los Angeles. I was having a lunch with Carl at the NBC commissary. I remember so this vividly. And Dick Van Dyke, Carl had invited Dick Van Dyke for lunch, so the three of us were having lunch. And Carl Reiner said he saw this most unusual, phenomenal performer at Catch a Rising Star. And Carl has total audio recall. He did Andy's whole act with the foreign accent, which he did perfectly, and everything. He did the whole act practically, except singing Elvis Presley. And I was amazed. And he said, "You got to fly to New York. You have to see this kid. You got to check him out. He's the most unusual performer I've ever seen." And then, coincidentally, I think it was later that same day, Bud Friedman called me, who's the owner of the Improv on Melrose in Hollywood. And he said, "I'm flying this kid out, Andy Kaufman, to the Improv because he works at the Improv a lot in New York." So he said he's going to fly him out, showcase him here. And he said, "George, you got to go see him." So that was it. I mean, I got two people I respect tremendously in the world of comedy recommended Andy Kaufman. So I went to see him, and I was amazed, absolutely amazed, because he came on stage, and nobody knew him. So he comes on stage as this pathetic foreign man, trying to tell jokes, and losing his place, and starting at the beginning, and telling jokes like the traffic is so bad, it's terrible, terrible things, and everyone is squirming in their seats, and then he does do the imitations of President Carter. "Hello, I'm President Carter." And then he says, "Now I do the Archie Bunker. Hello, dingbat, going into the kitchen, making the food. Meathead, get away from my chair." And then he says, "Now I'll do the Elvis Presley." And everyone is like holding their heads. And then he turns around and you hear 2001 theme, and he's combing his hair. He turns into Elvis, and he does the most brilliant impression of Elvis. He blows the roof off the place. So people are screaming, because especially bringing it up from that level of incompetence to a tremendous, and then he played the conga drums. He was a terrific musician, and he was brilliant at the conga drums and that eccentric dancing. So I mean, right away I knew, I'm not afraid of the bizarre. I like the bizarre. See, Howard is more practical. So Howard might not have, signed him, but Howard made some great deals with him. And also I wanted to know, because I always did this, I wanted to make sure I cared about the person that I was managing, because that is like a marriage. You spend a lot of time. You spend a lot of time with that person. So yeah, I took him to dinner a couple of times. I heard about his grandma Lily. He always visited on the way to New York. He'd stop off in Florida. He had a heart. He had a heart, and even though he was very bizarre, because I was concerned just about that he might be completely insane, just based on his stage performance. So he turned out to be a really good, sweet-hearted guy, and that made the whole difference. I put up with a lot of ridiculous things with him, and bizarre behavior, and doing things that were self-destructive career-wise.